Hi guys, a number of people have been asking if I wouldn't mind doing a bit of a mental health update, and it struck me that there's probably no better time to do it than not the night before Christmas, but the Friday night before Christmas. Any followers, if this is not your cup of tea, as a sort of, if mental health updates and all that kind of stuff aren't your cup of tea, please do stop. This channel is about putting lots of content out for lots of different people, and I know there are a number of people who like to be well served by this sort of stuff because they are struggling at Christmas. And I thought I'd share my thoughts as we hit the Friday night, the last Friday night before Christmas, because Friday nights are a tricky time for most people, especially if you're struggling with any number of things such as addiction, alcoholism, social anxiety, depression, you name it. I would warrant that a Friday night, body dysmorphia, eating too much. Friday nights are nights where something somewhere in the calendar system or in the weird diary system says it's Friday night, throw back, kick back, throw caution to the wind, it doesn't matter, eat a bit more, drink a bit more, have sex a bit more, do whatever you want because it's a Friday night. And so if that's what you do on a Friday, the Friday before Christmas, woohoo! And as I was passing through London tonight, there were lots and lots and lots of people all outside various watering holes, all of which I've spent far too much money in, all having really convivial times. It was all really nice, you know, umbrellas up, having fags, I was living vicariously as I smelt the hops of the beer and I heard the twinkle twinkle laughter of women's laughter at jokes that weren't funny from men who aren't funny, but the women are pretending they're funny because it just makes the evening just move more smoothly, all that kind of stuff. And I was put in mind thinking, oh, I got that pang. I got that really strong pang in my chest where I thought, oh, that feeling outside of, that, oh, not quite feeling like I can let go and run at a sort of easygoing, socialising situation. Not that, you know, we're being social over Christmas, we're seeing lots of people, but just that thought of just going out of a Friday night, throwing, you know, kicking back, letting your hair down, all those phrases, throwing caution to the wind and all that sort of stuff. And as I headed home and got home, I was sort of thinking, I felt the Friday feeling that I've talked about before on the channel, but I felt it times 10, times 30, in bold, underlined, in italics, and all the rest of it. And Christmas is a really tricky time when you're one of us, and what I mean by one of us is one of the more acute individuals suffering under the weight of any form of directly diagnosed mental health illness, whether it be bipolar. I suffer from bipolar episodes, depression, which is also strangely, depression is often diagnosed in conjunction with anxiety. So you feel that you're anxious about life, you're anxious about the world, and you feel that you can't really contend with it. And some people deal with that anxiety by diving under the covers, staying inside, becoming a bit sort of hermit-like and all that kind of stuff. And other people deal with it with a sort of mania. And I think I sit within the mania camp, though I do have those periods, incredibly intense, dark periods where you want to avoid the light. And obviously, I mean, you guys see me most of the time being stupid on the channel. And yeah, I'm like that a lot of the time, but I'm also not like that an awful lot of the time too, when I'm doing my normal work and all the rest of it. So I just thought I'd just open up and have a chat and have a natter and see how you guys are. Pop your comments below. Christmas is a time where a sense of perfection and a sense of being perfect is everywhere and in all things. I think it even comes from the idea that things look pristine and beautiful, whether it be Christmas decorations, whether it be frosted, snowflakes, whether it be, just the imagery of Christmas is one of a sort of white, crystal, clean, fragile perfection, isn't it? And fragile perfection is kind of sort of an apt description because, I think we are all as people fragile and imperfect. And, it's really hard that when the whole seasonal, the season of Christmas, all of the seasonal elements of enjoying Christmas are all about having a perfect family get together, getting the right present, getting the right amount of presents, not too many, making the most perfect food, creating a perfect ambience, being a perfect sort of company. Everything is about creating a sense of perfection, principally for your children and for your partners and for your lovers and all that kind of stuff. But also, you know, behaving right and perfectly for your family. It's also a time of the year, interestingly, that we hook up with family members that perhaps we don't see for great swathes of the year. And who's had a pound for every time growing up, you know, when you're with your family at Christmas? It's like you find yourself having to retell and regale the story of your year to people who haven't known every sort of intricate detail. And in the telling of your year, the pressure I find is sometimes to make it sound overly perfect and neat and clean and simple and, oh yeah, no, it's been good, I've done this, I've done that, you know, how are you feeling? Fine. You know, there's that old saying that they used to say to me when I was in rehab, fine. If you say fine to someone, usually, not always, but usually, it's false information nicely expressed. And I think at Christmas time, we spend most of our time with family and friends, really, saying everything's fine. You know, how's your year been? Yeah, that's fine. There's also the pressure, you've not just got Christmas, the pressures of Christmas, you've then got the pressures of New Year's. Who am I going to be with? Is my social circle big enough? You know, when you're a certain age, when you're young, you're worried about numbers. I mean, I used to be obsessed about how many friends I've got, how many things am I being invited to, how many things can I go to in a night, all that kind of stuff, you know. And I would sometimes of a night in Soho be bouncing between 3 or 4 groups. And I remember an ex-girlfriend of mine, Georgie, she once said to me, she said, you know what, Mark, I had to finish with you because, you know, most people would go out for 1 or 2 nights a week, but she said you went out every single night of the week because you had a different social circle. And it just exhausts you. And that was me trying to be perfect to too many different people, to too many different groups. And of course you end up being imperfect. And in a weird way, that's what happens at Christmas. You know, so social anxiety isn't just about being unable to cope with a social situation. I do sometimes get frustrated that, you know, if you talk about having social anxiety, you're somehow seen as oh yeah, you've got to be careful with him. You know, you can't walk into like a busy room, because I can walk into a busy room and be infinitely more chatty and sort of, you know, charming than anyone else that could walk into that room. But inside, I'm a seething mess and mass. And what I'm worrying about is not the getting in the room and sort of doing the initial kind of lubrications and all that kind of stuff. What I'm worried about is, where is this going to end up going? Where is this going to end up? How long can I last here until alcohol and all that kind of stuff is going to be in the system and within everyone's system, and I'm going to be slightly disconnected, slightly out of the loop, and unable to connect with anyone? So I kind of want to get in, do my shit, and get out. But social anxiety is actually as much about the pursuit of hearing that everything in your life's perfect from all those people you're around. So, you know, we all ask questions like, oh, how are things? Wanting to hear that it's great. And how, you know, people sort of, you know, people put a magnifying glass over, you know, work, relationships, money, love. You know, if you're single, I mean, I bet if you're single and you're going back to your family and you've got parents and family, you're going, oh, have you met anyone yet? And you've got other people saying, well, have you found a new flat yet? Or if you haven't got a job, you know, have you found the right job yet? Or if you haven't got enough money, you know, oh, how are you making ends meet? And all those questions, it's a time of year where no one's necessarily doing it because they want to hurt you or because they're necessarily being nosy, though they can and they do sometimes, let's face it. But they do it because they want to actually not be answering the questions about themselves. So then you engage in this weird thing where you ask the questions back and they're going through the... So that's one of the things about Christmas is it's really important. Remember, I'm saying this like it's a solution. I find Christmas fucking stressful and really worrisome. But one of the things that I do sometimes find helps is that if I assume that absolutely everyone, not just me, the one with social anxiety, but everyone is struggling to some extent with the socializing of Christmas, you know, worried about what they're going to say, worried about how they're going to come across. It just helps. It just helps me. Of course, it's a time when there is a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of alcohol, and also when I was younger, there was a lot of drugs, and it's a time when it's very hard to say no, and you've got lots of people going, oh, go on, just the one. And you know, you can only say I'm driving so many times, especially in this carbon neutral world where really not very many people drive anymore. You can't really say it. Oh no, I'm not, I can't drink, I'm driving. It's like, no, you can't, unless you can afford £60,000, you know, to park and go into the congestion charge and all that shit. So do you know what I mean? So it's a tricky time because it's not just alcohol either, it's food. And for a lot of people, I think food, in some ways, is even more permissive and sort of insidious than drink, because how many of us are going to come out the back end of Christmas feeling fatter, and I don't say that as a pejorative term, but, you know, feeling fatter, feeling unhealthier. Body dysmorphia kicks in a massive way over Christmas. And so, you know, again, it's that overindulgence. It's like, I'm going to overindulge. I'm going to let go because society is saying we can all let go. It's like, I think someone coined the phrase, Nadia, the other week, Christmas is almost like in the year, if you imagine the year was like a really extended week, Christmas is like the time we binge on everything. And I mean, I know back in the day, I used to binge badly on recreational drugs as well. And it was a time of, you know, on reflection, I think it was a time, especially because I didn't have my two youngest girls with me for many of those periods of time, I'd blow out. I'd want to blow out because I felt sorry for myself. And here's the other thing that I think is really hard. You know, if you are inclined towards negative feelings, depressive feelings, bipolar, you know, all those kind of things. If you're lonely, you know, if you've got a very limited social circle, you don't have family, it's very easy to feel sorry for yourself. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times and there are situations when it's absolutely fine, I believe, to feel a little bit sorry for yourself. You know, if you've hurt your arm, it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna feel like, oh, bloody hell, that really hurts. That's fine. But I think there are times where, you know, feeling sorry for yourself is more about wanting other people to feel sorry for you. And it's almost like, you know, I'd rather have any attention rather than no attention. And I'd say that one of the major problems in my relationship with Nadia, and one of the byproducts of all my addictive behavior, was sort of, in a sense, not trading on, but kind of using my sense of the injustice of not being able to see Izzy, or the injustice of not being able to see Flo, and all that kind of stuff, using that as part of a portrait of a man who you should feel sorry for, and therefore, you know, he's a cool guy and he means well and all that kind of stuff. And I think around Christmas, it's a time where, you know, Christmas throws a spotlight over the imperfections of all families. And I think if we just accept that all families are imperfect, maybe we can stop striving for perfection. Because I think one of the things, if there's only one thing I've learned from my CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which has helped with bipolar, anxiety, depression, and addiction, one of the major tenets of it that I would say that's really important is this idea that you can't achieve perfection in anything. You can strive for excellence, and you can, you know, say aim for, rather than 100%, aim for sort of 75%. But if you get 60%, that's well and good too. And so, you know, it's just a different way of viewing things. So I've written down a hit list of some of the kind of things I use when I'm successfully managing my negative feelings and my negative thoughts. And as we go into Christmas, I thought, rather than just sitting here telling you how I feel, now I'm on my meds. My meds, I've been taking them now for months, haven't I? And I would say that they are working to a minor degree. I still have probably 1 or 2 days, I'd say every week, where I can hit a really vacant, dark patch where I'm generally going to have to go through the motions of doing the more sort of, what would I call it, the more kind of repetitive work that I need to do of editing or writing, whatever it is, stuff that I can slightly turn my head off to, or trading and all that kind of stuff. I can sort of escape my head, but I do enter a vacant lot for probably about 48 hours a week. But that was happening a lot more than that. So I would say that that's lessened. I think my family would say that there's more of a kind of even keel to me. I do still struggle with the start of days. You know, however early one gets up, it's just like, oh, I can't help but sense that every day is just an enormous mountain to get through. But anyway, I thought I jotted down a list of things that really help to get through things. And one of them, don't strive for perfection. So that's a key one. Don't strive for perfection. You know, just try to be good enough. Just try to be good enough. That's right. I said excellence a minute ago. I meant try to be good enough. Good enough is enough. I can be enough of a dad. I can be good enough as a husband. You know, you don't have to be excellent. You don't have to be the absolute best. You don't have to be all these things. They're all arbitrary targets that no one else is putting on us. They're our own targets. And really, they're usually targets that we've designed them so that we can beat ourselves up, so that we can get the hormonal hit of feeling shit about ourselves again. Okay. Fight the feeling of FOMO. We all know FOMO, fear of missing out. Go for the joy of missing out. You know, here's the thing. I walked through Soho tonight and I thought, I want to belong to one of these groups. I want to be in one of these pubs. I want to be. And as I walk past, they're going to have a great time. Some of them aren't alcoholics and they're just going to have a great time and they'll blow out tonight and they'll be fine. Others are alcoholics. Now, what am I? I'm an alcoholic. So if I was in there having fun, it would be fun for an hour or two. By the end of tonight, you would probably find me somewhere up Nelson's column, and that's not a euphemism, I mean Nelson's column, probably waving a flag and, I don't know, doing a moonie right next to his arm or whatever, or his lack of an arm. Do you know what I mean? So FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah, I'd quite like to be in there, but actually, what's the reality of that? After that first drink, after that first hour, you know, I'd talk shit to someone, I'd flirt with someone, everything would go wrong. Everything would go wrong, and within minutes you're like, so it doesn't take much to just imaginatively think, okay, missing out. If you haven't got a problem with alcohol and you've got a fear of missing out, well, you know, just wait until the next thing that comes along. There's always going to be something new that comes along that's going to be enjoyable. All bad things come to an end, just like, sadly, all good things come to an end. Something else that I find really useful, be of service to other people. I've said this many times before. If you've got loads of relatives coming around, if you've got the in-laws coming around and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do that, just be of service. Why don't you give yourself a task where you're helping Nadia, say, to cook something or make something or help tidy up or help go and fetch someone or go and pick someone up or go and do the shopping. Be of service. Take yourself out of your own selfish head and think, how can I do something today to help the person I love, even if the thing that we're doing is not necessarily my cup of tea? You know, it's a great way to kind of get through meeting other members of the family at Christmas time because it means something to someone else that you love. Have an escape plan. I mean, I've just said you can't always say, you know, I'm driving, but if you walk into a gig, listen to me, if you walk into a gig, a drink or whatever for an evening, if I was to go in and meet sort of several people for a drink and I just say, look, I can't stay long, I've got to go home in 2 hours. And they go, oh, no, you could stay. Well, just say, no, I can't. I've got to be back, I've got to be home for the kids, or I've promised my other half this, that, or the other, or I just want to go home at that time, but I'm here now, so let's crack on. By the time you leave, they'll be so drunk and pissed, they won't even know that you're going. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like have an escape plan. Something else that I really like, and it's really odd, because Richard E. Grant told me this years ago when I worked with him. Do or conduct random acts of kindness where you get no reward or recognition for it. And I think he did something like he paid off a debt of someone and he never told them. You know, that's something that, the reason for doing something like that, it might just be, you know, slipping a little bit of money into an envelope and popping it somewhere, popping a bit of money in an account. It might be, you know, if you're looking after an elderly relative and you know they love something, some kind of food, you know, you buy a load of it in a shop and you pop it in the cupboard and you don't tell them. Just something like that. You don't want gratitude for it, you don't want thanks for it, you don't even want it to be acknowledged, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it for someone else. And that will make you feel nicer about yourself, and that will make someone else feel nicer about themselves too. Fake it to make it, classic line, just fake it. I mean, I often fake it to make some of the content that we do, and then in the faking of it, I'm making it. That's me. I've just hurt myself. You see what I mean? I've got there, and by taking myself out of that moody, reflective, suddenly you find yourself in a better mood. Big one, this one. If you're a drinker and you know someone who doesn't drink, or you know, don't insist on asking them why you're not drinking, or just have one. I remember, I'm really ashamed to say this. I worked with a chap years ago, a friend of mine, Tony, in Bristol, and he wasn't drinking. And I remember when I was drinking, I used to go out with him and go, why aren't you drinking? No, go on, you can just have one. Well, why aren't you drinking? And I remember thinking really, really wrongly, and we're only talking, you know, well, how long have I been in sober? 15 years? So 16 years ago, I'd be like, he's weird. There's something really weird about him. There's something suspicious about him. He doesn't drink. That's really weird. That's awful. That's awful, because that's the very thing. Now, is that possibly part of why I find it a struggle to be out in social situations, because I worry other people are going to think that? It's a fact. People do think it's strange if you don't have a drink. But the way we can get around all of this is, for any of you drinkers who are out there listening to this and you've got to this point, and if you haven't buggered off because you think this fucking nut job is just talking about shit that doesn't apply to me, if you're drinking and you're with someone and they say, no, I'm not drinking tonight, let them not drink. Most people ask people why they're not drinking so they can make the person asking who's drinking asks them so that they can make themselves feel better about drinking. That's usually what it was about. That's what I was doing with my friend Tony. I'd be like, why aren't you drinking? Because I didn't want to be reminded that I was drinking far too much. And that is something that we could just park in this busy drinking, overindulgent period of time. You know, whether it be like Nadia's sister Dina coming over, she's like today, she says, oh, I'm not having a drink. Now, she likes a drink, but if she doesn't like a drink today, I shouldn't be like, why aren't you drinking? I still do that as a recovering alcoholic. Why aren't you drinking? It's not on. Remember that all things are not happening now. This is a really critical one for me. especially with work. I get emails come in, say, from commissioners at TV stations, pitch for this, pitch for that, all that kind of stuff. I've got to do it now. And if I get an email at like 4:30 or 5 p.m, the onus is on thinking, I've got to get this done before the end of play, 6 o'clock today. No, stop, pause. I used to have a credo that I used to share with my team when we had about 18 people working for us in the office. I used to say to them, if an email comes in after 5 p.m, and even if they say it's urgent, it's not so urgent, they couldn't have sent it earlier, it can't be dealt with tomorrow morning. It's going to be dealt with tomorrow morning because actually, we all deserve to have some respite of an evening, apart from me, because I'm editing the vlog. Do you know what I'm saying, though? So just remember, all things don't have to happen now. And that's not just about practical matters, but that's about emotional matters too. If you're worried about how things are resolving themselves with a member of your family, if you've got issues with someone, if you've got big conversations to have, if you've got something you really feel, oh God, I've got to have this, not confrontation, but I've got to deal with something, it doesn't all have to be dealt with now. And even when you start to deal with whatever those things are, you don't have to deal with everything in that moment. Take bite-sized chunks of everything, break things down, because anxiety comes from a belief that all things are coming at us all at the same time. And what happens is we get addicted to it. So we see one thing coming at us, oh, that's the next thing, let's add to it, add to it, add to it, add to it. And before you know it, you've got a great big pie in your face. Go to a 12-step meeting. All over Christmas, there are 12-step meetings for food, for cocaine, for drugs, other drugs, I mean like heroin. Not that you'll be taking heroin, but you never know, you never know. Food, codependency, sex addiction, all those things. There are 12-step. Al-Anon, for anyone who's related, and especially Al-Anon, a huge majority of people at Christmas have to deal with living with active alcoholics. And there is an addiction, if you can believe it, in being around addicts. So Al-Anon is a 12-step recovery meeting for relatives of people or who are addicts. So if you've got a partner who's an addict, a son or a parent or whoever, go to Al-Anon. And believe me, just by going to Al-Anon, you're not somehow kind of branded with a mark on your forehead that means that everyone knows you've been to a 12-step meeting. You go in, you come out, no one knows. There's a vital word in there called anonymous. No one will know. Remember that everyone is struggling with something. And this goes back to my thing about walk into a room. How even Donald Trump has paranoia. Well, probably know he's got paranoia. It's pretty evident. But do you know what I'm saying? Even the most seemingly confident, bolshy, pushy people, usually the worst attributes in a personality are about that person overcompensating for some lack or perceived lack in themselves. So if you're meeting people or seeing people in your family who you struggle with, who rub you up the wrong way, who you find a bit arrogant, perhaps just kind of think to yourself, it doesn't mean that you let them walk all over you, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to become their best friend or that you have to see them anymore, or you have to take shit from them. For you, don't let it go to your very, very core. Or as someone once said to me in an AA meeting, don't give someone else the key to your brain and your heart and let them unlock it, get their hand in and go, you've got the key. Don't hand it to people freely. It's a vitally, vitally precious tool, your key. Exercise. This is the thing, exercise. Keep moving. If you're, the tendency, I know with a lot of, when people think of people who've got depression, they think, oh God, the window, the curtains are shut, no one's answering the door, not gonna go out, they pull the covers up, they're not gonna move. That is often a symptom of it. Or there's a mania, a little bit like myself, and the thing to do with it is to change your environment, not constantly. And if you do it too much with addiction, there's something called the geographicals where you keep moving. Don't do it as a solution, but in the very short term, if you're overwhelmed with something, go outside, go for a walk, go to the shop, do something, do anything, just change your environment, just work it up, or do some exercise. You'll be amazed if you just ran up and down the stairs in your flat, or if you're in a block of flats, up and down the stairs outside, it will just energize you, get oxygen moving around. It sounds really boring, but it works. It works a treat for me. Be honest, but don't be cruel to others. If you need to draw boundaries, this is what this is about really. If you need to draw boundaries with members of the family, especially members of the family who are really fucking taking the piss, who are really selfish, who are really self-centered, who constantly are sort of bullying you or jibing you and all that kind of stuff, be firm and be honest. I always remember someone saying to me when I was in rehab, it's all right to be angry. Because sometimes you can get a bit muddied. You sort of think, oh God, I've got to be really, I've got to be really sort of kind and caring in my soul. I've got to be really sort of considerate to all human beings and all creatures. No, you don't. You want to be all those things to everyone. But if someone's taking the piss, tell them they're taking the piss. Just don't lose your shit in telling them it, and don't get unnecessarily cruel. Don't home in on any of their vulnerabilities, because that will just make it worse. But you can absolutely draw a boundary and be firm. And that might be uncomfortable, because for a lot of us it's very hard to draw a boundary. But I promise you, if you can just be brave for that moment and say, do you know what, do you mind if you just don't ask me about A, B, and C, because actually I'm feeling a bit shit about that, and then shut up, usually the awkward silence means I won't ask you. Great phrase I was talking to my girls about the other day: be kind and not always right. I had a bit of a to-do with one of my girls a few years ago, and you can both get really obsessed with who was right in this situation. That happened, that led to this, and the reason that happened was because of A, B, C, and D. Yeah, okay, well, there may be merit in that, and if you can both work your way through that, brilliant. But actually, sometimes there's a point where you have to let go of the argument, and it's about being kind to not just the other person, but to yourself. Let go of it. Apologise. Just say, look, you know what? Okay, we both lost our shit. We both fucking made mistakes there. Try and be right. Try and be kind rather than be right. It's a nice adage when you've got conflict. And the reason I'm saying all this, conflict is always hovering over Christmas time. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you get the wrong presents. Let things go. It's an obvious one. Let it go. Let it go. If you can, let it go. Let it go. Obviously, that is not a recipe for be a walkover, but sometimes if it's a small thing, if it's a character trait in someone that you know that they can't deal with, just let some shit go. Don't get in everyone's face all the time. Do you know what I mean? Just let things go. And I've said already at the beginning of this, avoid feeling sorry for yourself. It is sometimes hard when you're the non-drinker and all that. I sometimes do feel sorry. I sometimes think, God, you know what? It's all right for all these fuckers. They can all have a drink. They can all let their hair down. And I'm constantly acutely, it's like in my head and in my heart, it's like watching me in HD, which is bad enough with a nose like this. It's like, I can't watch it in that pristine clarity 24/7. I just want to, and that's my analogy for drinking and drugs and whatever it was I've done in my life, is that it just blurs it a bit, so it's not so acute and it's not so painful. And there's that phrase I've often said before, you get sober, or if you have a sober period, a lot of people are going to be doing a dry January, be warned. One of the joys is you get your feelings back, and you've got a sharpness of mind and a sharpness of feeling. You can respond to things. You can often feel like you've got quite sort of thin skin, and you feel things quite acutely. On the one hand, the joy is you've got that clarity, but on the other hand, the horror of that, or the difficulty with that, is that it makes you feel, it makes you feel vulnerable, and you're at sea. So, it's easy to sort of feel sorry for yourself at Christmas time when you can't indulge in certain things. And rather than saying you can't indulge, it's better probably to say to yourself, I'm choosing not to, because if I do, I'll have fun for 5 minutes. You have to work out what's the trade-off here. And sometimes you could maybe use this as a simple definition of addiction. Is the trade-off that I could have a bit of fun now and I'll be fine for weeks on end? Or has history shown, when I look back, whenever I've had a drink or a bit of food, have I gone on to then binge, destroy my relationships, cause havoc, feel shame, feel guilt, resent, all this kind of stuff? Have things started to kind of fall apart? And if they have, don't do it. It's better that you can't. Believe me, it's better that you can't. So, try and do those sort of assessments. All I'm really saying is Christmas is a really difficult but potentially joyful time. And I won't say who said this, but someone once said to me when I first was sober, they said, Mark, I saw you the first Christmas. You'd been to loads of AA meetings. I haven't been to AA meetings recently. I'm constantly needing to attend to my sobriety better and more meaningfully, but I look after myself to a degree. And someone said to me, they said, you know what? I saw you at dinner at some do a year after you got sober, and I thought, I want a bit of that. And then they went into rehab and they got sober. Sadly, since then, they're not sober, and I'd argue they're not quite so happy. But do you know what I mean? You can have a serenity. It's not easy. I haven't got all the answers. I don't have it all the time. I should be enacting it more. But I just thought, you know what? I've been through all this shit. Lots of people have been asking for an update. And these are some of the rules that I employ in my toolbox, which has no DIY kit in it, as you can probably tell from the house. But it does have all these in it. An emotional screwdriver. Everything about that just sounded wrong. I'm so sorry. But you know what I'm saying. An emotional screwdriver. Consider this film an emotional, psychological, and mental health screwdriver. Sounds like a cocktail, doesn't it?